Had contour wheels on it, actually, I think at the time, which weren't as tasteful as the rest of the stuff, but wheels are like shoes, we can change those. We're pretty successful in getting a lot of really great E30 M3s quite early on. It was the second E30 M3 today. We just bought it back about 2 weeks ago, and it's the 13th time we've owned it. And it's only fitting that this second E30 M3 that we ever bought for resale was the very first car of all cars, independent of BMW or M3, what have you. It's the very first car that we ever bought back from a client. And a light bulb, an aha moment came about, and we decided, realized quickly that we've spent all this time finding the right car. We spent all this time going through and sorting out every mechanical future-proofing effort we can do that we know to at this point in time when the car is 15 years old, when it's 20 years old, when it's 30 years old. And we've invested way more money than any sound person would ever invest in a used car. Nobody's wife would ever let them spend as much money as we do in the rejuvenation program that we put these cars through. It's just, it's absurd. It's way more money than what people are used to spending in terms of doing your basic fluids and filters and tires and this one oil leak and that. I mean, they're not going to spend money on things that haven't broken yet or not yet symptomatic. They're going to just fix what's the obvious things that they can physically see an improvement or feel an improvement, where we're going to know what that's going to be and stay out in front of it. And in doing that, we've realized that, well, we started with the best car. We made that car as good as we knew to make it at that time. We're going to sell it to somebody that's going to appreciate that, and they're going to keep the car up. They're not going to take that much life out of the car. Rather, a lot of guys will actually make the car their own and make it even better if they can, especially in the early years when we didn't have 6 different locations and the staff of EAG pit crew that have grown with us over the years. The best part was when that phone rang and he said, it was like maybe 6 or 12 months later, and he's like, I've had a great time with the car. Nothing wrong with the car. I'm just ready to get something different. And I'm like, well, I know what that feels like. Would you be interested in buying it back? I'm like, well, yeah, I would. The same conversation that started that ended with a transaction. And I remember clearly, I called my dad, who was in the farm equipment industry. We grew up working on all the farm equipment, understanding just the dynamics and the principles of how a machine works and why it's important to keep your stuff serviced to the top degree in the off season, because when it counts, it really does count in the farming community. I called Dad, and I'm like, Dad, I just, because I'd seen my father, Evan and I's father, do this, with big farm equipment all the time. I mean, you can only move a combine so far. So it's a big piece of machinery. And they did the same thing. They made it as good as they knew to make it. And I was the one painting the tractor wheels and painting the corn heads and buffing them and eventually working on them and doing a bit higher level stuff. The point being is that was a pretty defining moment for EAG and what has become really the cornerstone of our business model and really our quality-centric approach towards everything that we do, knowing that, it is our problem when we buy the car back if we bought the wrong car. And so doing that due diligence to buy the right car up front, to make sure that we do as much as we can, independent of the cost when we have that opportunity to do it, really has paid itself in spades. In this case, 13 times. Did we make money on the car every single time that we sold it? No. Did we have some $5,000 and $10,000 investments into the car's future when we didn't plan on spending that much money at that time? Yes. But at the end of the day, out of those 13 transactions, we're certainly in the black. And we've built some really great relationships, though. I think that's maybe even more important in providing people an ownership experience and an opportunity to experience what an E30 M3 is and what it should drive like. Even though it has 6 digits on the odometer, it still can look like it has half the mileage. And here's the receipts for it. It can drive like it has half the mileage on it. And here's the receipts for that. And yes, it still has all of its original body panels. And yes, it's never hit a fixed object at speed that it was outside of maybe a little rock or a little imperfection here or there. And yeah, we repainted that stuff because we wanted, it stood out or didn't match the rest of the body panels at some point. And the guy we sold it to the 9th time commissioned us to paint the hood and the front fenders. And here's the receipts for that and the wheel refinishing, etc. And so understanding that now this car is like 16 different people's car. But it's really just one person's car. It's the Enthusiast, because all these guys had that same ethos of let's take really great care of this car, let's drive it. And the cool part about the story is really the beginning for the fact that it was these 3 PCA guys. They were instructors with the Porsche Club. And the first guy bought it new, and he used the car as an instructor car. You take students around, show them the track. One of the cool things about this car, on the dash, on the passenger side, and it's been there since the day we met the car. And this was an instructor car to go around. Let's learn the track. Let's point all the corner workers out to the students. Don't hit that guy. Don't hit that guy. Apex here. On the dash, opposite the handle, is a little pocket, little indentation in the dash, and there's just enough spot there you can grab a hold on. And you can see where there is a hand divot into the substrate of the dash from passengers holding on to that going around the track. And you can't impregnate that on accident, and it's part of the car's story and its history. And the car's all that much better for it because it never didn't finish the weekend that it went there to finish, and the motor's never been opened because it was always serviced the right way and the valves were adjusted. And it's a very reliable machine when you take care of it. Drove it to work. It was a dual-purpose car. I mean, most of the big Porsche guys that we've run into, they're driving their M cars to work and they're driving the Porsches on the weekends. It's a pretty common relationship and a complementary pair of brands there. And the E30 M3, I mean, totally is the ultimate driver's car for so many reasons, and really makes the guy feel like a hero just because the car is so easy to drive and drive with confidence. And when you can drive with confidence, you can push a little harder and dig a little deeper and have a lot more fun. This first guy sells it to one of his other PCA buddies, and they're quite close. And he says, here's the car. You've seen it since I bought it new. If you sell it, make sure to check with me first. I might want it back. And next guy writes a great chapter. And then he sells it to another guy in this little clique. And same thing. These three guys now have mutually exclusive rights over this car if they're going to, the third guy's going to sell it. Third guy now, 2005, decides that he's going to sell the car to free up some space and go to the next car on his bucket list. And he puts the car in one of the forums, and s14.net. And I remember clearly seeing the ad, and it's Diamond Schwartz on Cardinal, and it's a pretty cool color combo. That's a pretty early only color combo, and it's got a couple period correct mods on it, suspension techniques, sway bars, and H&R springs, and Bilsteins, and Sparco tower brace, and it had maybe I think a Nakamichi head unit in it, and just an Evo flywheel, and just some had contour wheels on it actually, I think at the time, which weren't as tasteful as the rest of the stuff, but the wheels are like shoes, we can change those. I don't think it had a price listed on it. We get a hold of the guy, and I remember having a good conversation with him, but except it was kind of an odd conversation because he was asking me a lot more questions than I was asking him, and I was almost on my back foot, like I'm trying to vet the car and he's vetting me. And I hadn't experienced that before. And I mean, again, this is the second E30 M3 I've ever tried to buy, or that I was ever successful in buying, probably. I finally get to the point where it's time to do a transaction. Like, well, we'd really like you to fly out and meet with us. Then, you can drive the car home. And I'm like, we got to fly out and interview to buy this car. Must be really nice. It had like 90,000 miles on it though, which was not super low at the time. And they wanted a pretty good number. The rule with E30 M3s from late 90s to mid-late 2000s was the rule of $15,000. $15,000 would buy you an E30 M3. We buy lots of different E30 M3s for 15 grand. And this one, did have a good story, and it had great service history, had everything since new. So in addition to having all the service history, it had these three guys that obviously loved and cared for this car. They decided that 16,500 was going to be the number that we would be eligible to buy the car for. Well, Evan, my brother and business partner at the time, was certainly super enthusiastic on the E30 M3s, maybe even more so than myself at the time. It was Mr. E28 M5 and E34 M5s, just getting ready to import my M5 station wagon for my 25th birthday present to myself from Europe. First import ever, Santorini blue, coolest wagon. Last year, E34, 6-speed, big brakes. I mean, just, again, different story for a different time. That thing sounded so good. Anyway, Evan can speak E30 M3 better than I at that moment in time, and so it's better to send him. He's definitely a more likable guy in a lot of ways. And so one-way ticket out to Maryland he goes. Well, we passed. Evan flew out with a bag of cash and a license plate and a blank bill of sale, and $16,500 later, Evan's driving the car back to Cincinnati. And we get the car, freaking awesome color combo. I just bought a white on black out of Texas that had about 155,000 miles on it. I think I paid like $14,000. So that's number two and number three. And here we are maybe 2 weeks later. I've got my photos with my little Canon ELPH, 320 pixels big, right in front of my business with my little vinyl, carlocatorsinc.com, trying to brand This guy calls me from Chicago. He's the 10 o'clock news producer for one of the main channels in Chicago. He's like, I'm really interested in that Alpine White E30 M3. Great. My brother from Texas is flying in soon. I just bought a new car and we need to get some break-in miles. I think we're going to fly in this weekend and we'd like to look at that white one. Like, he's a big BMW guy. He might be a customer of your guys's too. So I should bring him with me. He's going to be in town. So we set the appointment up. We always try to work by appointments when we can, even back then. And he drives down 250 miles in this brand new, it was a 05 996 turbo. They get out and I've got the white one parked right next to the black one, and he's walking around. His brother just like peels off and he's looking around the black one the whole time. And I'm selling and going over the white car with him. They come up to us and like, you know what? I think we're going to do 2 car deals today. And so the other brother ends up buying this Diamond Schwartz on Cardinal. We send that one, first car I think we ever loaded on a truck too. And we shipped the car open shipping to Texas with DAS, which was a whole different learning experience. I think at a point we had a 33% damage ratio shipping with them, and realized that you get what you pay for. And that lesson couldn't have been learned earlier. Trying to cut the corners in the industry just always bit us. And thankfully, we probably only had to make a mistake once in order to learn from it. And other than using DAS perpetually. They had a great guy, Richard. He was really nice and I always thought he was taking care of our best interest and had a great relationship with him, despite these drivers that didn't speak English trashing our cars. So enclosed only has been the policy now 15 years strong. The point being that car, that Diamond Schwartz, and that whole relationship, especially being that a pair of brothers bought it from a pair of brothers, and that being the first car that we ever bought back, it's a sentimental car to us. That car's more family than car, and so it's definitely one that we try hard to sell by interview. We always do sell it a little bit less expensive than what other cars that don't have now 16 owners, because that is a psychological crutch that most car guys don't understand and can't get over if they don't understand our business model. And so I've always been able to use that car as a good way to introduce people to our business, to our brand, as I'm doing, I guess, right now, because the car's really been a mascot for us. And now at 113,000 miles, albeit not that many more miles, and we've got fresh odometer gears in the car 10 years ago or so we know the mileage is right, which most of the cars have some challenges with based on age and heat at this point. But we have the solidarity behind that car that we can sell it with even more confidence today than we did to the second guy after going through it the second time, which really is kind of a cool thing to be able to bring those cars and preserve them for the community to continue to enjoy, because that car is going to continue to survive for just as long as it has moving forward, because of all that love that the previous enthusiasts have bestowed upon it.
Finding your next dream car can be like searching for a needle in a haystack, but the best tool to use is AutoTempest.com. AutoTempest is the smartest and most powerful tool to search for your next car or your dream car, because they allow you to search all the major listing sites at once. Their motto is all the cars, one search, and they've been supporting VinWiki for the last 3 years. Quite honestly, it's the first place I go to look when I'm searching for my next car, and I think that you'll absolutely love it. So check them out today at the link in the description below, and thank them for their continued support of VinWiki.